quite a number of fans, not only in the stadium at Motherwell, but obviously all over the world who were tuning in, and disappointed a lot of people on Sunday. And as I say, I'm disappointed myself. But in the scheme of things, I think that I'm sure they'll understand, and I hope that they would share the same sort of memories as I have myself here of this football club, and the great days that we had. The funny thing about football, it's you forget very, very quickly. Quite right. Life moves on, and it's moving on at a hectic pace, and you kind of forget yourself, But if I look back, I look back with really fond memories, and I would certainly hope I haven't let them down too many times. And Sunday apart, I definitely I wasn't best pleased with myself.
Martin, can I ask you, you mentioned about coming back into football. Would you ever at any stage consider coming back to Celtic football?
Oh, well, wait a minute, I think that there's a new manager in place. I think he'll do wonderfully well, and he will take over, and he'll the torch will pass to him, and he will take over. He will inherit, as I inherited, some really good footballers at the football club, and he will inherit one or two that he wouldn't be best pleased with either. As everybody, it's what you do with that situation that will determine your own particular future in football, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it'll always be. Yeah.
I think we confirmed, Davy, that we're delighted that Gordon Strachan's accepted the managership at Celtic, and he'll join us next week, 1st of June. And I think for today we want the focus to be on Martin and the cup final as we come along, and Gordon will be here next Tuesday to take the questions and take the thing forward.
Did Martin help identify Gordon Strachan?
Martin was involved in the process and was kept fully aware as negotiation discussion went on.
Have you had any contact with Gordon?
Yes, I did. When David mentioned, did I identify him? He was too small. I couldn't see him. But he'll. I'm sure he'll be fit for you, in a way that I was unable to be. I spoke to him, and he was just obviously interested to hear my own particular thoughts and things, and really his own particular views on it. He has his own way of doing things. It'll be completely different to myself, and I'm quite sure he will be very, very successful.
Oh my goodness, Davy Provan, as media conferences go, that is one of the most powerful ones that I have seen. Surely, Davy, he's being a bit hard on himself. That last comment, in Gordon Strachan, I'm sure he'll be fit for you in a way that I was unable to be.
I think he's always been a very modest man, Jim, always very self-effacing, so it didn't really surprise me, those remarks. I think significantly, and perhaps understandably, he wasn't prepared to take on the questioner who asked him, did he ever see a future return to Celtic Park for himself? Understandably, he doesn't, at this stage, want to rain on Gordon Strachan's parade, but significantly enough, he did say that he intended to come back into football at a future stage, that there is unfinished business for Martin O'Neill. And at just 53 years of age, that's hardly surprising. I'd be very surprised if in the longer term we don't see Martin O'Neill back in the dugout.
A dugout somewhere in the game anyway, Davy?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's proved, Jimmy, he's a top operator on both sides of the border now. He's highly thought of throughout the higher levels of the game, and hopefully he can get his personal situation sorted out. Understandably, he has far more important things on his mind as we stand here today, but in the fullness of time, I think it's inevitable that Martin O'Neill will come back into football.
Davy, he did say there he's sure that Celtic fans will understand. He hopes they'll understand. I'm sure they will too, and no doubt you are. But how much will those same fans miss Martin O'Neill?
I think it depends on the results that Gordon Strachan gets, Jim. I mean, football managers are very quickly forgotten. If the guy who succeeds them gets better results, and Celtic did finish on a low at the weekend. If Gordon Strachan comes in here, picks the dressing room up and hits the ground running at the start of next season, I think it will be a pretty smooth transition. Whether or not he can do that is a different ballgame. Gordon Strachan is inheriting let's say a mature squad, a squad that lost the title on Sunday at a time when there isn't the same amount of money that Martin O'Neill was able to spend himself upon his appointment. So Gordon faces a very difficult task, not just in getting results, but also winning over the supporters who will always look upon Martin O'Neill as an icon.
And is it right to assume that Celtic are keeping Strachan out of the media glare until after the cup final, Davy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's only natural that Martin O'Neill will want to clear the decks. He will want to go out on a high at Hampden this weekend, along with John Robertson and Steve Walford. And I think it's only right they should be allowed to take their bow and get their send-off from the Celtic supporters before a new chapter in Celtic's history begins next Tuesday.
Davy, Celtic fans absolutely adored Martin O'Neill. How will he be remembered? I mean, you played under the great Jock Stein, who identified you as a potential Celtic star, and you did exactly that. How will they remember Martin O'Neill? Is he up there with Stein?
I think there was an awful lot of goodwill towards Martin initially, Jim, because he was viewed as being one of their own. He was an Irishman who had a real affinity for the club, so there was a lot of goodwill heading in his direction when he arrived in Glasgow in the first place. That, of course, had to be underpinned by results. He got those results, not just domestically, but more importantly, I think, in Europe. You know, he arrived at the club where the club's standing in European terms was diminishing rapidly. He reinstated Celtic, I think, as a credible football team in Europe. We've had some wonderful European nights here, both in the UEFA Cup and the Champions League. And as such, I think he will be remembered as the man who restored Celtic's reputation as a credible football club in Europe.
I think we'll all miss the Martin O'Neill leap in the dugout, Davy, when a goal was scored, that is for sure. Davy, it's a massive story. We'll be back to you, but for the moment, thanks.
To Reporting Scotland.
On the programme tonight, Martin O'Neill quit Celtic to care for his sick wife.
It's the correct thing to do for someone who has stood with me for all this length of time, so I'll give her some time back.
Also tonight, a 20-year plan for Scotland's NHS, a cure-all or more of the same.
And John Knox styles Band-Aid as the Kirk urges its members to protest against poverty at the G8 summit.
And Back to the Future to save the environment, another attempt to get freight off the roads and onto the canals.
Over. He's resigned as manager to care for his sick wife. A Celtic legend and a man who will rightly take his place among the true Celtic greats. The words of the club's chief executive as he confirmed the worst kept secret in Scottish football. Gordon Strachan takes over next week. Alan Mackay is at Celtic Park. Alan, what more has Martin O'Neill been saying about his reasons for going?
Well, Gillian, Martin O'Neill's wife Geraldine has been receiving hospital treatment for several months, as is often the case with illnesses of this kind. He said today they'd received some good news last year, some not so good news recently. By Celtic's own admission, their manager has been working under great personal stress because of this for the last 18 months. Now, he said today he took great courage from Geraldine and she kept him going, but now was certainly the time, in his view, to blow the whistle on football and to concentrate on winning her battle. Queuing for the turnstiles was easier as we waited for Celtic's announcement. It was 38 years to the day that a Celtic team under their most famous manager ever was christened the Lisbon Lions. Almost since his arrival, the outgoing manager had teased reporters over speculation he would leave. One day they'd be right, he said. But it wasn't to be to another club. After difficult news over his wife Geraldine's illness, Martin O'Neill said the time was right to step aside from football.
It's difficult. As I said to you before, having a monopoly on bad times, everybody has them and everybody copes with them. Just at this particular moment, I've felt it was it's the correct thing to do for someone who has stood with me for all this length of time. So I'll give her some time back.
They called his name as he left Celtic Park with just one game, Saturday's Cup final, left.
I appreciate you staying here, honestly.
And after 5 years of almost unbroken success at Celtic, the mood of their fans was in tune with O'Neill's reasons for leaving.
Martin O'Neill leaving, sad, regret. Took us on a trip of a lifetime to Seville and various other places. Gutted, but I hope and pray that Geraldine makes it. Really sad.
I mean, at the end of the day, family's got to come first, so, you know, gutted though, but you know, we'll do the job for him on Sunday. Saturday we'll see him out with a wee bit of silverware.
And a player brought to Glasgow by O'Neill told how he'd heard the news.
Just told us this morning. I think we were just a bit feeling strange, you know, because it's a strange end. But for me, it's not the end; it's the beginning. It's the beginning of something new coming up.
Thank you. And a last appearance for Martin O'Neill behind the Celtic Park microphones. Next week, in O'Neill's own words, a very different manager will be in the hot seat.
And Alan, I suppose many football managers must fear at some point in their career that they might be sacked. Martin O'Neill was emotionally attached to Celtic. How much of a wrench is it going to be for him?
Well, I think the answer to that question you saw there in that exchange between him and the fans. They love him and he's grown to feel the same about the club. He did say today that he felt he'd let the fans down by his players losing the league title on Sunday and even by losing in that famous UEFA Cup final adventure in Seville 2 years ago. But I think he can also look back on playing his part in rescuing the club from one of the lowest points in his history. I was reading a quote from Jock Stein earlier in the stadium earlier today in which he said, together we can do something to make this club great again, and I think Martin O'Neill will feel he's done a little bit of that once again. He did also say today he wanted to get back into football at some stage, but surely no one can dispute his reasons for leaving the stage at this time.
OK, Alan, many thanks. And we'll have
United. The Parkhead board say he's one of the greatest ever Celtic managers. Jeff Webster looks back on O'Neill's thrilling 5 years in charge.
There's as good a chance of me being here, as not. If you're asking me, am I leaving to go to another football club? The answer would be no.
Those few words at his news conference last Friday convinced many that Martin O'Neill had finally decided his time at Celtic was up. The man who's taken the club supporters on a roller coaster ride of emotional successes and disappointments, preparing to step aside to spend more time with his wife who's been ill.
Back again to O'Neill, this is the best chance of the match and it's made!
O'Neill was part of the revolution masterminded by Brian Clough at Nottingham Forest, which took them to the top in Europe. He also played 64 times for Northern Ireland.
O'Neill, 1-0.
But it was in management that he was destined to make his mark. 2 League Cup wins at Leicester City proved he could make the most of modest resources. It became increasingly obvious, however, that he needed a bigger stage. And when O'Neill, a lifelong Celtic fan, was approached, he had no hesitation in accepting. Success was instant. In his first season, he won the domestic treble of League Cup, Scottish Cup, and most importantly, the league title. Next on O'Neill's list was Europe, and 2 years ago, thanks to goals like this from John Hartson against Liverpool, they made their way to the final of the UEFA Cup. Memories of the club's European Cup win in Lisbon in 1967 were revived as the Spanish city of Seville was taken over by an estimated 80,000 Celtic supporters. Having climbed the mountain, Celtic just fell short of conquering it, losing in extra time to Porto, managed at the time by a certain Jose Mourinho. For O'Neill, recognition of his achievements came with an OBE. Success has been maintained in Scotland, a League and Cup double last season, and despite losing the league on Sunday to Rangers, there's another Scottish Cup final to look forward to this weekend against Dundee United to round off one of the most successful spells in Celtic's history.
Well, Chick Young is at Celtic Park. Now, Chick, just how big a blow is this to Celtic?
Well, Alison, there's been dark clouds over Parkhead all week since the defeat at Fir Park, and as you can see, no change tonight. I think they've done the right thing in announcing this because it will change the emotion of the Celtic fans. They've cleared the air going into the Tenant Scottish Cup final on Saturday. I think it will lift the place to a certain degree, but there's no doubt that Martin O'Neill is way going. Jock Stein, the greatest manager in the history of this club, and he was on his way. He was in the wake of Jock Stein. He came nowhere near, of course, to achieving what Jock Stein has, but it's a huge blow to the club. The Celtic fans want to know what happens next. In comes Gordon Strachan. What can a man is he? Here's David Curry.
Charlie pushed from behind by McAdam and the quick free kick taken. Strachan right through, there is no flag. Strachan stakes it and scores.
Strachan may get a hero's welcome at Parkhead next week. He was more of a villain to Celtic fans in the 1980s. So what about 20 odd years on?
And the reason he used to take such a hostile reaction, similar to the way Bellingham does at the present moment, is because he was such a fantastic player. And if he can reproduce half of that as a managerial level, then we're on to an absolute winner, you know.
Gordon Strachan's obviously a very intelligent man. From seeing him in his past managerial posts, Coventry, Southampton. He can read the game very well, and he can explain it well when he's in the media, and I just think he's a really good communicator.
He has his own way of doing things. It'll be completely different to myself, and I'm quite sure he will be very, very successful.
As a player, Strachan certainly enjoyed success, notably in Aberdeen's European Cup Winners' Cup winning side. He also won an FA Cup medal with Manchester United and a Championship medal with Leeds. As a manager, his greatest achievement was at Southampton, where he took them to 8th place in the Premiership and an FA Cup final. Strachan's been out of the game for over a year, but is aware of the kind of pressure he'll be under on his return.
The media pressure is huge in Scotland, because there's a couple of papers and it's like 10 or 12 pages for Celtic and Rangers every day.
Mind you, Strachan can stand up for himself, even if he seems unable to sit down in the dugout.
Chick, there's been some mixed views, I know, from Celtic fans today. Does Strachan have the stature to pick up where O'Neill left off, do you think?
Well, not physically, but certainly in football terms. I think he's enigmatic the way Martin O'Neill was, and I'm looking forward. There's one or two legendary post-match interviews that I did with Martin O'Neill. I'm looking forward to bobbing and weaving with Gordon Strachan. That'll be half the entertainment value. What we do on the pitch, I think will be a success. I can tell you that he's taken Tommy Burns on, I think, as his assistant. That gives them a Celtic connection. A lot of Celtic fans don't fancy Gordon Strachan because he was once at Aberdeen, but I might point out that Rangers fans are quite happy now with Alex McLeish. He was a teammate of Gordon Strachan with the Dons. It's a very interesting day, as it always is, another crazy day at Paradise. Gordon Strachan is coming, and goodbye to Martin O'Neill. But he's a Tenant Scottish Cup to win for Celtic on Saturday. Again, that's going to be very, very interesting. Alison, never a dull moment when Celtic are concerned.
Chick, thank you very much indeed.
He greeted the fans congregated outside to wish him well as he announced today he is leaving Celtic Park after Saturday's Cup final. Good evening, welcome.
5 years have at times flown in, and at other times they have been the longest 5 years of my life. But overall, great memories of the football club, fantastic. Just at this particular moment, I felt it was it's the correct thing to do for someone who has stood with me for all this length of time. So I'll give her some time back. The board and I have been in discussions for some weeks now at the moment, and obviously we're waiting for certain biopsy results to confirm or suspicions of things. So really, it's just been last few weeks have it's probably taken it into a different level. I think, regardless of how tough the decision is, I think it's absolutely the right decision to do. And I think that's the most important thing. The most important thing for Celtic Football Club is the decision that has been made here at this moment. And I say I would like to. I'm not saying I'm putting this in chronological order. I'd like to thank Dermot Desmond for having the insight to bring such a brilliant manager to the football club. And he has been proved absolutely correct, and I am delighted for that. 5 years ago, and also the board members who also made that decision that fateful afternoon in May of 2000. So I remember it with great clarity. This has been an absolute honour and privilege to manage the football club, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm delighted to be 5-year part of a 117-year history, and I have to say I must thank Brother Walford for actually bringing the club into being, and I will never forget it. As I say, I disappointed quite a number of fans, not only in the stadium at Motherwell, but obviously all over the world who were tuning in, and disappointed a lot of people on Sunday, and as I say, I disappointed myself, but in the scheme of things, I think that I'm sure they'll understand, and I hope that they would share the same sort of memories as I have myself here of this football club, you know, and the great days that we had. The funny thing about football, it's you forget very, very quickly. Quite right. Life moves on, and it's moving on at a hectic pace, and you kind of forget yourself, you know. But if I look back, I look back with really fond memories, and I would say I haven't let them down. There's a new manager in place. I think he'll do wonderfully well, and he will take over, and he'll the torch will pass to him, and he will take over. He will inherit, as I inherited, some really good footballers at the football club, and he will inherit one or two that he wouldn't be best pleased with either. As everybody, it's what you do with that situation that will determine your own particular future in football. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it'll always be.
Well, directly after the...
Yeah, definitely a sad day. I think Martin has become, he's already a legend. He'll rightly take his place amongst the Celtic true greats. When you look at the way the club was at a particularly low point in its history 5 years ago, he came in, he dragged us to a position where we've had amazing success, 6 trophies, hopefully 7 on Saturday, re-establishes as a credible force in Europe. The magnificent nights here at Celtic Park he's given to us, and of course Seville. And Seville for me was beyond football. It took it beyond that. It was really a celebration of all that's Celtic, and we'll be eternally grateful to Martin for that. So an outstanding manager, and a magnificent contribution that he, and of course John and Steve as well, with the team, the 3 of them together, have made to this club.
Was it a difficult decision to accept the resignation?
Yeah, as we said, that it was reluctant. We accepted it, but as time went on, it became very clear that the only solution here was a clean break, both for Martin, his family, and the club, and that decision was made pretty recently.
And hopefully he will be hoping to go out on a high on Saturday at the cup final.
Absolutely. I think the focus of the players will be on Saturday. Focus of Martin is now on Saturday, and we really want to one last push and take the cup.
Can I just ask you about the new manager coming in? When was that decision made?
Again, just recently, as the Martin's picture became clearer, we made that decision pretty recently. We're delighted that Gordon has accepted the role. He'll come in on the 1st of June. From the 1st of June, he's already started with regard to new players, new fresh blood, and we're looking at having him in, as I say, next week, and then we start the process going forward. We've got to look forward, and hopefully he can build on Martin's legacy.
Did you have any candidates for the job? Did you accept any applications?
No, there were no applications because clearly there was no job at that particular time. But we looked at the market, we looked at what was available. We felt Gordon was the outstanding candidate. He was a preferred bid. He was our only choice, despite what you might read elsewhere. No other approach was made. And delighted at our first approach, we were able to do a deal.
So is this the end of an era and the start of a new one for Celtic Football Club?
Absolutely, it's an end of a magnificent era, and we look forward. The summer should bring change.